So when was your first inkling in Boston?
I think it was 2008 or something when I finally qualified.
There's a lot to be said about the tradition of it that pushes people.
I think that's where the real magic is. It has this heritage in running that's unlike anything else, you know, so more special than the Olympics. This is maybe controversial. The way of the run.
So this is a conversation we've been talking about having for, it's almost been a year now.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Started around when we were doing the speed project. And I've a little bit of background. So I don't even know if you know this, but we met briefly the first speed project.
No, I mean, my recollection is doing the form analysis.
Yeah. So I met just super briefly,
Yeah.
but I saw the speed project going on. I think it was Strava's Instagram. I was living in Vegas, came down. I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Came down to the sign and I saw you guys all finish.
No
for
way.
The first time.
Okay.
Yeah. And like literally just like, I think gave everyone a high five, like, dude, congrats. This is crazy.
I don't think I ever knew that.
And then somehow my buddy Mike got a hold of you for coaching. And then we ended up connecting after that. So,
and then when Santa Monica College or Santa Monica High School did a form analysis and the rest is history.
Yeah. How was my form when you first saw me? Do you remember?
Total crap. It's nicely improved. So
my buddy told me that I looked like Andre the Giant when I'd run do triathlons.
Yeah.
So just like full on swinging arms.
Heavy landing. Yeah. It's been so long that I've seen you run so many times since then that it's hard to remember. Yeah. It's hard to remember the befores, but they're pretty much usually always the same. You know? So including myself. I mean, I have this one shot of me running Pasadena Marathon. And I think I got second place in the race. I think it's running decently fast, but it's like I'm wearing this stupid hat, and I just have this crazy heel strike and overstride, and I'm like, it's good to have been on both sides of it.
For sure,
you understand.
And I do think, I guess at some point we should probably go through history, but I think now we'll just dive right into
to get right into the controversy.
Okay, all right. So we've been talking about doing this for a long time because there's a lot of, I think we come at it from the same mentality. There's like, you can take training and running seriously and you can have fun with it, and you can also do both, but there are extremes on both sides that do, that kind of it just make the sport kind of like a little cringe sometimes. Yeah. I see it more in triathlon though.
Yeah. And it's like the one trick pony thing. I just don't think that I've gone pretty far down that. I purposely at one point in my life said, I'm just going to focus on the marathon and just be that core runner, take everything else out. But I don't think that really most of us are looking to be that. Like, who wants to be really great at the marathon or 10Ks and then like you can't move your couch across your room without,
Yeah.
Like that's not. I don't think that we identify with that, right?
Yeah. So let's get into Boston.
Which is like that's why this is relevant. It's like that's the most core runners marathon. I mean, it's the one that you really have to qualify for.
Even so my first marathon was actually during an Ironman. And then when I finally was like, oh, I can run a marathon, let's try it. I didn't realize how intense and the like lore around Boston was until I think I did Chicago. And then you see like everyone's looking at the people who are wearing the Boston jackets.
Yeah. And
like,
how old are you at this point in your life when this is?
I was probably 33 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was 26 when I ran my first marathon. Okay. And when I got into that, I didn't really know what a marathon was distance-wise. I knew it was a long run race, but I had no idea it was 26.2 miles. Yeah. And I definitely did not know what Boston was. I had no idea.
So when was your first inkling in Boston, or when did it come on your radar?
First time I think somebody probably mentioned about, I ran 3:14 my first 3 marathons, having no GPS or even understanding of pace or desire for anything specific. And I think it was 2008 or something when not accidentally, but I finally qualified. And I think I learned about Boston when I qualified for Boston.
Got it.
Like, oh, you qualified for this race, and it's like, okay, but what is that?
Yeah.
So that's when I learned. So I was probably 27, 28 years old before I really knew what Boston was.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting. I think, and I got to that. I got invited as a pro in 2021. It's like cool for me to like have that contrast on that from perspectives. But I think a lot of people don't know what the significance of Boston is for runners, for like hardcore runners.
So I think the crazy part too, I think when I first started my first marathon, it wasn't even I found out about it but the qualifying time was so far off what I was doing that it was like,
what was it back?
Oh my God. I think my first marathon, I actually blew out something in my Achilles on a shakeout run the day before.
Lovely.
No, I'm sorry. My first one, we ran with the flag.
Oh.
So I ran with the Angelman flag. So my buddy Mikey, we support that. So the Windy City Angels is the charity that we do. His son has Angelman syndrome. So we ran with the flag, passing it back and forth.
Wow.
So there was no time because we were just trying not to hit people and just rubbing ourselves raw with the flag.
Brutal.
And then the second one there was like a shakeout run the day before, and I twisted something, did something, Achilles blew up, swollen, and from literally from walking to the start line, I was in pain.
Wow.
And I remember thinking like, I'm like doing some serious, like real long-term damage here, but I like could not do it. So I never had there was never a time where I was like, I'm going to run this for a time, which is probably why I never like thought about Boston that seriously.
Yeah.
Until we started talking last year, really.
Yeah.
And that was.
And the qualifying time then, because it's always shifting. It's like, and it has always shifted.
So I just turned, I was 30, or no, I was 40. And so I had gone in the 40 age group. So my qualifying time was 3:10.
Okay.
And I remember when we were planning and we were doing the training, I don't know if you remember this. I asked you several times, do you think I'm on track to like qualify for Boston? And you never would answer me. You would never give me a straight answer. You're like, your times are looking like, keep doing what you're doing. It was never like, I think you're there. Or like, if you pick this section up or this part of your training up, you'll be there. Yeah. And in my head, and I never wanted to tell anyone that I was like going for it because I just didn't want to put that out there. Yeah. But low key, I was like, I'm going to this is my goal to qualify for Boston on this race. Yeah. And it's crazy what that can do. Like, I don't know if I would have pushed, like if that wasn't an achievable
have that
goal.
Carrot,
no, why would I have chosen that pace group? Yeah. Why would I have and I know it's different for you, but like when you're this was the first time I was really pushing myself. Yeah. Like the mile 20, like that's real. Like when you're like, what am I doing out here? The self-doubt comes in. Like I wouldn't.
It happens every race too. Yeah. Like, a long distance race, you're going to have that tug of war back and forth. So.
Yeah. But I don't think I would have pushed myself as hard as I did in those moments where I was questioning myself if I didn't have Boston in the back of my mind. Yeah. So to me, that's the cool thing about it. Yeah. Right. There's very, like you put it in the right way. There's very few carrots that are worth and that have that kind of like esteem, haven't changed. Yeah. There's a lot to be said about the tradition of it that pushes people, which I think probably doesn't get talked about too much.
And I think the tradition is like I think that's where the real magic is, because there's a similar carrot with the Olympic trials qualifiers. Once you're like a sub 2:30 marathoner, it's like, can I get that Olympic trials qualifying? But that's sort of like this, it's like this feather in your hat. It doesn't have that magic that Boston has. I feel like, and I should say that I've gotten close but never achieved that. So like if you achieve it, does it change it? I don't think it's the same because of the history of Boston being I think 1897, 1896 was the first Boston, and it's been continuously run ever since. So it has this heritage in running that's unlike anything else, So
the first controversy I ever heard about Boston was when people started getting charity entries. So that was like my first look into, I never thought about it. I was always like, oh, you got to qualify for Boston. But then there was this kind of like, I would hear these rumblings of like, well, they didn't really do Boston because they did it through
charity.
Deserve
it, right? Like,
correct. Yeah. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should say that we've both qualified for Boston, right? We are qualifiers. Yep. So I think there's, that affects these positions. I think like imagine if I try to think, from the other side of it, if I hadn't qualified, but I had the chance to run for a charity and for a good cause, like obviously that would be interesting, right? Experience part of that culture and just and I will say that when I ran my first Boston 2009, it blew my mind for how it delivered on that cultural, like that visceral experience of
the energy of it.
That energy, it's insane. Like what's happening in the city of Boston around that marathon. And I've run New York and I've run Chicago and a lot of the big ones, and nothing's like Boston. Yeah. And it's still my favorite marathon of almost 70 that I've run. So, but I think that I think what makes it special is that you have to qualify. So to answer the question, the charity thing, I get it. Being a race director, I understand. And I think having it be bigger than the running, but you could do that if you just only had the people that qualified too, right? Like you could take out, especially now you have a lot more qualifiers because a lot more people are trying to run marathons and people are really putting the work in more than any other time in history. So you could fill a bigger, race, a bigger pool with qualifiers. So I'm supportive of the charity part, but okay. I think that it should adapt with time, and I really think that they should limit the number of charities going back if they want to make it really core, which I think it has historically been. They've made decisions that have made it exclusive, yep. right? So I am in support of it being an exclusive experience,
yep.
and limiting the charity,
whether that be for money or time.
I think just time.
Okay.
I think I think it should never. The money thing that should be a separate question because these marathons are getting the cost of.
But if someone is going to Boston because of a charity, they're essentially take out the intent behind
right.
it. They're paying
their way in.
Their way in.
Yeah.
Which I'm not mad about. Yeah. Especially if it's going to a good cause.
Right.
If it was all right, you can qualify for Boston or you can pay the Boston Marathon to put in their pockets $10,000, I'd be like, yeah, that's a little.
There's no cause behind it. Yeah.
But because the cause behind it is, but it's so again, if I guess we're going to, if Boston was going to give that money away to charity, but there is something special about raising money. Let's be honest, a lot of people that are raising money to do Boston for a charity are probably having to put up a lot of their own because it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So they're putting up their own money, plus they're building awareness about a charity, getting other people to support them. I think there's something special to that.
So you're in support.
I'm in support.
Thumbs down.
I'm thumbs up for a charity. I do.
It's 2 thumbs up for charity.
But then you do, and listen, they have a challenge, right? Like how much of the race is charity versus how much of the race is a race.
And that's the part where I think they should always be erring toward the core running race.
And I'll further that by saying if they keep erring towards the core running race, it will allow them to increase what they are able to raise for charity.
And the flip to that coin is that the less charity entries you have, the less money ultimately the race is making, right? Like correct. If you have 10,000 versus 6,000 people that are raising money for charity. Yep. Though all charity, raising is not equal. That's the other thing. So I don't know. It's, yeah. I think it's 2 thumbs up for charity. Yeah.
I agree.
But I am also in support of limiting the charity entries, and otherwise it's going to start to lose some of the, that core. Yeah. Which we'll talk about why I don't think they're going to lose that.
Well, so let's break into that. So for the last 2 years since COVID, if you hit your qualifying time per age group, then you got a slot if you wanted to take it. So this is the first time they've ever done that, right? In the history, or did it used to be like that pre?
I think it has been like that.
It's gone back. Yeah. Okay, it's gone back and forth.
Yeah.
But for say the last decade, it's been the number of, you have to qualify with the time. And then depending on the number of entries, they take the fastest entries.
Yes.
So then the actual qualifying time is sub
what it is.
What
you thought it was.
Yeah, correct.
And for the men, it's 3 hours. The fastest group of the men is 18 to 34 age group. And that is 3 hours flat.
Okay.
And then for women, it's 3:30. And we also have a non-binary now, which just matches the women's time of 3:30 for the fastest group. And then you're adding, I think it adds about 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes per
age group.
5-year age group after.
So I'm at 40. So mine was 3:10.
3:10. Yeah.
And so
it's 3:09. No, it's actually 3:10.00. Correct. Would be But if you're 3:10.01, you're out.
And so,
that now doesn't matter because if the race is full when the 2 hour and 54 or 55 minute group has registered, there's no more spots left.
And so are they taking, this is the one thing I never understood, are they basing that new qualifying time on the fastest age group, or are they basing it on each age group has a different qualifying time based on the number of entries?
It is based off of the world's fastest times in the world in the marathon, to my understanding. So they're looking at like what are humans running marathons, and how does that translate to the, you know, what does this race represent for what segment of the population? I don't think that it goes as you age up. I don't think that there's much more thought other than like you should be able to run.
Got it.
Yeah.
But now the qualifying time.
Yeah.
So for the fastest age group of, what is it, 18 to 30?
18 to 34. Yeah.
It's 3 hours, but this year they did it based on the entries that came in. And so it was how much faster?
So it's a rolling, I don't know the exact number that it cut off at, like whether it was 5 minutes or what.
It's 5 and change, I think.
Yeah. So what they do is they start at the fastest qualifiers, and then they open it up to anybody who's run sub 2:30. Actually, I think it's like 20 minutes faster than your qualifying time. If you run 20 minutes or more faster, so if you're 2:40 or faster, then you can sign up in this 1 week window. They know they don't have that many that's going to fill it up, right? So they leave it open for that week. The next week comes and they say, okay, now if you're 15 minutes faster than your qualifying time, now you can register. And they keep doing that week to week. So this time around, when they got to the 5 minutes faster than your qualifying, then the race had filled up by that point. So there was never a time when they released it to the 3 hour group, they just never got there. The race was full before they got to that week where they were going to let the 3 hour people register.
Got it. So the crazy thing is this week, so it's only a 1 week period where age groupers are allowed to put in, right?
Yeah.
So you put in your time.
Yep.
So here's the crazy part. I don't think I told you this. I actually missed the week. Oh. I didn't put in, and I beat myself up for it. I got like an email or something the last day it closed, and I was in a different time zone. And I missed it. So I never put in for it.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have mattered anyways because I think
I
did. It was like 3:09:40. Like I just
really
made
close.
it.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have mattered anyways. But the other part that's interesting to me is, and I'm pretty aware of what's going on in the running community. Like I follow races, brands.
Yeah.
There was, from what I saw, there was no mention that this is the week to put in. And I almost wonder, is it like, are people trying to keep it quiet to limit the number of?
Yeah, no one's talking about it.
There was no one who was like, hey, everyone, if you qualified, go sign up.
Right.
This is your chance.
Interesting.
There was nothing.
So with it should be mentioned that if the age groups don't sign up differently, meaning that if you're 20 minutes faster than your qualifying time, if you're 20 minutes faster and I'm 20 minutes faster, if we were two different age groups, we still have that same week to sign up.
Okay.
So that way, that's how they fill equally across the ages. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if they just let the 18 to 34, it would all be filled up with young people, right? So they want to cover that whole spectrum.
Got it.
That's good that they do that.
So, all right. So it's 5 minutes cut off now. So there's a lot of people that are pissed because for the last 2 years, if you qualified, you got in.
Yeah.
So the other part to this too is you have to qualify before October the year before, right?
Yeah.
So you also have to plan out your timing, training, races to make this.
But you do on the flip side of that is that you get like a year and a half, I think. It's something like 18 months.
Correct.
Till you have to run. So you could, if you didn't want to run that soon, you could run the next year.
So I qualified Chicago last year.
Yeah. So now
you can put in after.
That will count for next year.
It will.
It will count for next year.
But that qualifying time, if they keep the
likely going to be faster, right? But there is a possibility that it's not. Let's just say a bunch of people stop running marathons, or people get slower, and
So where's your stance on that rolling qualifying time? So
I've been my first qualifying time for me at the age of 27, 28, I think it was sub 3:10. For the fastest group, it was sub 3:10.
Got it.
I ran a 3:06 or 3:05 or something as my first qualifier.
Okay.
So that's interesting. My first Boston got in with a much slower time than you've had. Think about that. Like I had only ever run 3:05 or 3:06. I think it was 3:06, and that was in Boston. I ran my first Boston. Interestingly, I got a calf cramp at mile 16 in Boston, and I didn't qualify for Boston in Boston. That was my first Boston experience. But so then I've also there was 1 year where before they had this rolling start, there were so many people suddenly because it never used to really sell out. And back when I started running marathons, you would sign up for marathons at the expo. There was never a thing where there was that many people running marathons where they would sell out. That wasn't a thing. So that Boston was unique in the online registration. I remember the first time where it was one of those situations where everyone's got their finger on the on the button, like, okay, Boston registration is open now, and then you like start to register.
Go.
And then there was a time
it's like
when
a concert selling out.
Yeah, and so people who had been the faster runners were not getting in, and slower runners were getting in. So that was where Boston was put in that situation. I remember when that first happened. Of we need to figure this out if we want to be a real true core celebrate speed race. We have to make sure the fastest get in. And then they invented that system of, okay, then the faster you are, the more priority you have. Okay. So I think
So it's based on merit more on.
Yeah.
So it's been merit since that time. So when was that?
Which is only like 10 years or so in that. Yeah, it has not been that long.
Got it.
So this is kind of all sort of new.
It's pretty new.
Yeah, they're figuring this out as they go.
And so based on that, are you a fan of the merit-based rolling time?
I think so, because otherwise you're just celebrating whoever's like the best online at registering quickly, really. Yep. I mean, and as time goes on and we get more people in the marathon, it would be continually frustrating for people who are. But I will say the flip to that is like, just because you're faster, does that give you more right? And I think in Boston, yeah, because that's what this race is. So if you don't believe in that and you don't like that, there's thousands of other marathons in the world that you can go run. So what I like about Boston is they're
stakes in the ground.
Yeah, they're celebrating that.
So now, besides the time, are you more of a fan of accepting everyone who hits a Boston qualifying time, or using the fastest times?
Oh, like so
versus the last 2 years versus this year.
So you're accepting everybody that's got the standard, regardless of how many people are in the race.
Which is, how do they do that, by the way?
See, what I don't know is what their limitations are for permitting. So are they allowed to fill up to 35,000 spots? You know what I mean? If they get 35,000 worldwide qualifiers that want to register, do they have a permit that allows for that? I'm not sure about that.
So that's the bigger question. So the last 2 years, if they're accepting entries and say they get 60,000 people who qualified across different age groups, where did they make the cuts?
Well, they're making it in the slower times, right? The slower the times, the first people.
Not the last 2 years, right?
Oh,
if you qualified, you were able to race. You had a race entry.
So,
but I don't know when maybe then they went back to the time. If you registered by a certain time, so it was just based on, as long as you qualified
within this window
and you registered, they took the first people that registered and then it was closed. Or did not enough people run because of COVID?
See, I didn't realize that the 2 years before they were doing that.
Yeah,
and the COVID thing was interesting because I think you had the ability to defer.
Correct.
As well. So that whole COVID thing is like, I'm not exactly 100% sure.
It's a blip.
It's a blip. Glitch in the matrix.
Okay. I don't know if.
But before COVID and after COVID, it's the same. Yeah. So I think like what they want to do as
people got spoiled basically.
Yeah.
By thinking all I need to do is hit this time and I'm guaranteed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think it's healthy for so many reasons that doesn't stand, and I'm sorry that you're in that group. But I think why it's healthy is because, damn, people get so freaking bent out of shit, or like so married to times, and even just Boston and like the magic we're talking about that it is. I know people and I've trained people who like it is the life goal to get there. And while it's a special experience, I think still it's like, yeah, but we're just talking about running down the road. You know, like it's cool to have people yelling for you running down the road, but you're still just running down the damn road. So take a breath.
I do. Yeah. I mean, people do. I mean, it's definitely a serious thing. I will say, so I'm a product of the disadvantage side of qualifying, but not getting in.
Yeah.
But I was actually more upset at myself for not even putting in. I personally missed the time to register than I was when I heard it was 5 minutes. It wasn't like, oh, I'm relieved that I didn't put in for it and I'm relieved because I wouldn't have got it. I'm still pissed at myself for not even putting it in.
Yeah.
So that's my standpoint. Yeah. I'm like, I would much rather be, judged by, my viewpoint is I would much rather be judged by the community than by the committee of Boston saying, here's what we think the time to get in would be.
Yeah.
So I like the merit-based.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's, what does it mean to you to run Boston? I think if you look at the average Boston marathoner, qualifier and runner, it's a highly motivated group of people, you know. I mean, you're talking about very serious athletes, you know, and I don't care if you're 85 years old or, you know, 18, like it's work to get there. You know, you got to put the training in.
I think too, and I just thought about this now because you were bringing up the Olympics. It's the closest thing an age grouper in running can do to get to that feeling of like, it's not an Olympic qualification, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But there's nothing else really like it.
Yeah.
Where you have to qualify in a sport.
Yeah.
I mean, there's triathlon, but that's not, it's basically just based on each race. And there's, you know, like the top in each age group in each race. Boston's like a special thing. I think it's even more than like, I guess probably the equivalent of like what Kona would be for triathletes, but it still feels different. I don't know why.
I think it's because it's been around for longer and it's way more accessible.
Okay.
The triathlon I feel like is exclusive just based on, you know, finances. I mean, you're like it's, you know, you have to be relatively wealthy to get to Kona. You know, like there's a lot of people who can barely afford shoes, let alone a nice bike, and to qualify it with the times that you need. That being said, like that could be looked at as an excuse. Like people, if you want something bad enough, like you'll find a way to make it happen and, you know, get sponsors or whatnot. But yeah, Boston, I think I would say that Boston is almost, this is maybe controversial, more special than the Olympics because of the long running history. And obviously the Olympics have been around for a long time, but the idea that it's been continuously run and celebrated in live like that, I think that there's something special about Boston, even amongst the best marathoners in the world, where if they win the Boston Marathon, if it's a professional, more than the Olympics? It's almost, and sometimes it's as big of a deal as the Olympics.
Okay.
You know, it's like, it's that big of a deal. It happens every year instead of every 4 years. But you're getting way more energy in the experience than you get in the Olympics, generally speaking. I mean, there's some finishes in the Olympics where you come into a stadium and you get that roar, but there is no Olympic marathon course that has that many people as Boston. Now, New York has more people. There's 2 million spectators in New York. That's a special experience as well. But there's just something to that Boston energy. There's something about, it's the history. It's the fact that it's also a holiday. So I felt my first time going to Boston, not really knowing much about the magic of it. My first time there, I felt like this is what life feels like if you got dropped on a planet where everybody was runners. Because like, I remember going for a shakeout jog on the streets of Boston and like some truck driver, like, on his delivery route, like, go, good luck on Monday. You know, it's just like, what the hell? You know, this guy, it's like, cool. Usually they're like running you off the road. Yeah. So, and I felt like that energy was just throughout the entire city. I felt like you felt it in the coffee shop, you felt it in the restaurants, you felt it like, and when you looked around, there was so many ridiculously healthy people because of that whole thing of how much work a Boston marathoner puts into training. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons it's a special, unique, and I think it comes from the city of Boston, how much they love sports. Also, there's like major baseball games going on the same day.
Got it.
It's like, I don't know what
everyone's already drunk and like
no, seriously, and they're leaving the baseball game like right a mile away from the you know. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons.
What time does Boston start?
Typically around 9 or 10.
So it's later
in that range.
It's a later start.
Yeah.
I will say, you know, to that merit note, so I don't know if I'm motivated now to push myself even harder, knowing that it's a rolling time and the mystery of like here's a crazy part. And I think for the people that have done marathons, they'll get this if they've been pushing for a time. You kind of don't know, like you're following your pace.
Yeah.
But like anything can happen at any time that could take off 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, like that changes everything for your race.
Right.
So I think the idea that you're crossing a finish line, knowing that you just have to do the fastest possible, you have to move your legs faster than anyone else just to make up if you lost anything along the way. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That you really don't know. Like you can see the clock in front of you and it can say 3:09.
Yeah.
But like you don't know for Boston. Yeah. I think that's cool. And I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off about that.
Yeah.
But like I kind of like that it's like it's kind of fucked up that and then you don't know until 6 months later when you put in for it.
It's like this delayed gratification. Yeah.
Like I qualified.
Nothing. Yeah.
And then like but did I? And I think I remember talking to people about it too after, because I was super pumped that I qualified. But I always hedged it with, I qualified, but I don't know.